Matthew 16:21 to 28, and 6 verses. That's all that stands between Peter's best moment of last week and this one. Last week it was, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God," and then becoming the rock of the church. But stand on. Now Jesus tells them what that confession actually costs. He must go to Jerusalem, he must suffer, he must be killed, and on the third day he will be raised. Peter can't cope with that. "God forbid it, Lord," he said. "This must never happen to you." Peter's like the rest of us. The Messiah, the story should have a happy ending, victory, not execution. He is defending the very thing he was just praised for believing. But Jesus turns on him with the hardest words in the gospel. "Get behind me, Satan." Same mouth that said you are the Messiah now calls you Satan. Reminded of the Sting song, All Four Seasons in One Day. Also a reminder of what it's like living with teenagers. I said last week that the confession and the failure are not opposites. They're the same man at different distances from the fire. This is the fire arriving early. Peter thought the confession was the finish line. Jesus tells him it's the starting gun. Endo, Shusaku Endo, the Japanese author, understood this better than most, I think because he lived it from the other side of the trampling. After Rodriguez in silence steps on the fumier, the novel doesn't end. That's the part people forget. If they only remember the trampling scene, he goes on living as an apostate in the eyes of the church and of Japan, stripped of his robes, given a dead man's name, watching over the very Christians he was sent to save from inside a system that has broken him. And Endo's case, made slant through the whole rest of the novel, is that this is not the abandonment of discipleship, it's what discipleship costs when it stops being a confession made once at a crossroads and becomes a cross carried daily in a country that will never let you say the name openly again. Rodriguez doesn't get to be a hero. He gets to go on serving, quietly, unrecognised, having lost the version of faith that felt like triumph. That's Endo's whole argument with the priesthood he inherited from the West. The idea that faith proves itself in the grand gesture, that the clean martyrdom, the confession that never wavers. He kept writing book after book about the ones who wavered and stayed away. Jesus says it more simply than Endo ever needed to. "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me." For those who want to lose their life, save their life, will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Peter wanted a Messiah who saved life. Jesus is telling him the shape of the road is losing it. And I think this is where a lot of us get stuck, not at the confession, which in reality costs nothing, but the 6 verses after it, where the confession turns out to be a down payment on something much longer and much harder. I meet this in ministry more than I meet almost anything else. Someone comes to faith or comes back to it in a moment of real clarity. A hospital corridor, a funeral, a night when the sky of the clay tips was doing something they couldn't explain away. They say the true thing, you are the Messiah. But then there's the ordinary Tuesdays, and the cross turns out to be not dramatic at all. It's a marriage that stays hard, a diagnosis that doesn't fit, a child with needs that will outlast you, a parish that won't grow no matter how faithfully you tend it. Taking up your cross daily doesn't look like Golgotha. It looks like getting up again. Rodriguez's cross wasn't the fumier itself, that was one afternoon. His cross was the 30 years after it, being the trampled, disgraced, invisible priest who kept on loving people who had reason to think he betrayed them. That is nearer to what most of us are actually asked to carry than any single dramatic scene. But the chapter that begins with a rebuke ends with a promise. The cross is not the whole shape, it's the shape on the way to something that isn't lost at all. Endo's Tohansha, the companion who suffers alongside, was never suffering for its own sake. The trampled face in the bronze plate speaks because it is still underneath the foot, the face of the one who is going to raise Rodriguez up along with everyone else who he has stayed with in the dark. The suffering is not the destination. It's the shape love takes when love goes looking for people in the country that has outlawed it. So, "Get behind me, Satan" is not Jesus rejecting Peter. 6 verses later, he still calls him the rock. It's Jesus refusing to let Peter's confession curdle into a Messiah made comfortable. A Christ who saves without cost, a faith that cost nothing because it was never asked to carry anything. You said the true thing last week, out at the edge of the water. This week the question is whether you'll follow that confession down the road it actually leads. The ordinary, the unglamorous, daily losing of your life that turns out against every instinct you have to be the only way of finding it.